Okay, this is the 2025 Toronto Grand Prix women's 200 meter IM Heat 2. We are checking out lane 2, Tina Guan, and lane 5, Lavinia Ricca. Let's watch and then we'll review. Okay, let's come back to the start. We're going to take a look at Tina first here. So advancing up to the go. Looks like you're firing that back leg first, which is great. Good extension on that back leg, good extension on that front leg. Does look like it's not a very far out dive, so while we have good extension, a bit more pop, a bit more explosivity would be nice. Working in the weight room to develop some more explosive power would be really, really advantageous. We're talking about small change here, right? The change itself will be a large change to be able to change your dive properly, but what I mean is, yes, it's a 200 IM and we're talking about just trying to get a bit of a farther dive out, but every little piece matters, and critically, the better our dive is, the higher our starting speed is, and we want to start every race, every length, at the highest possible speed we can attain, because it's always easier to go from fast to slow compared to even just maintaining a regular speed throughout an entire length, let alone how hard it is to go from slow to fast. So the faster you are at the start, the easier it is to maintain a high speed throughout the entire rest of the length, right? And that comes right off the start. A little bit more explosivity is a fun thing to work on, and critically, it affects every single race. So it's something to consider. Pretty nice entry. Maybe not as tight as we'd like it to be on the hands, although they look really good. There's just a lot of air you've trapped with your hands, so I'm not sure if maybe looks like maybe some fingers are splayed out. Definitely some splay. Try and get those together, right? All these bubbles on the start here is you catching and bringing air in front of you. But overall, a nice looking kick. Maybe not quite as together as we'd like those feet to be. It almost looks like there's a two-stroke going on. You're initiating with the left and the right you initiate with the right and then the left leg follows. You can see that right is really dominant, whereas that left is a little less so. Good breakout. Nicely done. I think overall the entire opening 50 looks pretty good. We can see that our hands entering like that, hooking, broken at the wrists here, means that we start to encounter the water way out here and we have to slap our way into the water, right? This is not very streamlined, so if we can get those wrists up, we will delay this moment by a fraction and a few more degrees, which is advantageous to us because we want to generate lots of power in butterfly, and then we want to maintain that butterfly power by hopefully entering in as close to streamline as possible. Do we need to enter in streamline? No, but the closer we are, the better. And when we are entering as wide as this is a big old basket that you're hitting the water in front of you with, rather than slicing through it. So trying to maybe force those arms around, maybe doing a scapula retraction a little bit, pulling your shoulder blades back together so that the shoulder literally rises slightly higher, even an inch extra higher on both arms, right? And suddenly our biceps aren't hitting the water as early if they just have a bit more room to land out here more in line. But overall, good looking power. Good turn by the looks of it. I like this underwater. I think initially I sort of think that this looks like we could be playing with a slightly higher stroke rate. You look pretty standard with the rest of the girls in this heat, but you know, how do we become better? Two things I would say with this backstroke. One, thinking a little bit about core tension. We can see your hips somewhat, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a bit of a bounce to it. Taking a look at your hip here. There's always going to be a bounce, but theoretically we want no bounce. But again, like literally there will always be bounce, but it doesn't stop us from shooting for an ideal. Your pull itself underwater is really nice. Potentially small hands, right? You're collapsing your hand rather than let it be as large of a blade as possible. Could help you get a better hold even than you already are, but otherwise the backstroke looks pretty good. Maybe a slightly increased stroke rate, maybe a bit more tension in the core, maybe playing around with those hands a little bit are all good things that we can, as I say, play with. See what works, see what you like. This underwater with breaststroke, not ideal, right? If we're in an actual breaststroke race, 2IM sometimes, well, not sometimes, I think it manages to most of the time avoid valid criticisms because everyone acknowledges that it's a really hard 200 and that you're kind of trying to do everything all at once. But imagine, if you will, for just one moment, you are in the 100-meter breaststroke, and 7 meters? That was your pullout. We'd be having a pretty easy conversation talking about how we need to extend that underwater way farther. A really good competitive underwater breaststroke in Canada at least kind of starts at that 9-meter, 10-meter mark, and people that get away with being really good breaststrokers when they aren't necessarily push a 12, 13-meter underwater breakout. So extend that sucker as long as you can. We can see, let's go full speed here coming in, we can see that I don't think that you get one of the component parts of our breaststroke underwater, which is the dolphin kick, and if it's there, it's very tiny. That little guy. There is no limit to how big this pull can be. All right, you're doing the old school underwater pull out, which is a kick and pull at the same time, compared to the new school underwater breakout, which is I believe it's generally a kick and then pull, but it could be either or. It could be inverse of that. It could be pull followed by kick. But the point is that you're pulling and kicking at the same time there. if we're doing it this way, that pull and that kick need to be as physically large and physically powerful as you are capable of being. It's not supposed to be limited by anything. It's supposed to be literally as long as you are going in the same straight line. We don't want to see any like jumping or rising up or I mean, it'd be crazy to see pushing down into the depths. We don't want to see any change in our trajectory, but as long as we have a standard trajectory, it's as big as it can be. We need to accelerate on this, right? We've just shoved off the wall, and breaststroke underwater needs to be all about maintaining that initial high speed as long as possible. Watching this in full speed, though, we can see you push off, you let yourself slow down, you kind of maintain that slow speed constantly, so you're choosing at the right times, but you want to push off the wall harder, you want to get that kick even bigger to match the pull, which should be even bigger arguably, and get out a couple more meters. Getting out a couple more meters is an easy advantage that you can have, especially considering the heat that you're in, where I think basically everyone has as short a breakout as you do. Well, if everyone's doing it, why do I need to do it better? Well, no one gets better with that kind of a mentality. We can't see lane 1 here, but I don't expect that she got much farther than anyone else did, so it's something to consider, something to work on. The breaststroke I really like, honestly. Very easy. Maybe a bit of, again, a lopsidedness with you, where you're focusing on that right arm. You can see on that frame, and probably on this stroke too, your right is initiating faster than your left is, so you're a little lopsided there. I'd expect, based on watching this, that you're right-handed. We got to overfocus that left hand. Look at how lopsided this is. Right? Your left arm is literally taking a smaller stroke than your right arm is. So, two things are happening here. Not only are you generating equal strength, equal force on both sides of your body, if we split you bilaterally, right? One side is more powerful than the other, which is not conducive to going in a straight line. But 2, you're relying on a dominant arm, and then as a result, you're reinforcing that dominance. So you are on a downward slope of following this bad habit and not breaking it. So it happens lots where people just naturally not focus necessarily, but people naturally get on their dominant hand and then run with that for forever. But we have to make sure that we are balancing by probably overcompensating with our non-dominant hand. The kick is pretty good. There's even a bit of a whip to it, which I like. A very legal whip, which is even better. But maybe it could be bigger. If you can play with it being bigger, that'd be great. I wouldn't really want to see a smaller kick than that. And by I wouldn't really want to see a smaller kick than that, I mean I wouldn't want to see a smaller kick than that. If you can even out that left arm, that'd be great. Let's fast forward a little bit. Coming out immediately into the freestyle, right? It's the final dash to the finish. We see that you are breathing on the first stroke. Let's give ourselves at least 3 strokes of holding our breath to establish, again, this is the same theory of as high a speed as possible off the get, right? If you push off and it's kind of a short underwater and you are breathing immediately, 1, do you actually need that air? I doubt it. You've just been doing breaststroke, and I mean, I fully get it. Like, it's not like breaststroke isn't tiring, and actually kind of like by breathing constantly through a length, you feel like you're almost more out of breath than if you were holding your breath. But a couple of strokes to establish the stroke rate you want, establish the highest potential speed that you want, and then getting breaths in, probably not going to hurt you. In fact, it's probably going to benefit you. It's going to let yourself get into a position where you're developing that high speed, and then hopefully just maintaining it. And I mean, even if you're not maintaining it, if it's a degradation, well, at least you started from a higher point, a higher speed. I do overall like the freestyle throughout it. Maybe a bit more core tension, maybe your hips are just a little low. Especially right around now, I'd like to see a move made where we put our head down and we're not breathing for the rest of the length, because we don't need this air. This air isn't going to help us finish the length. It's purely psychologically that you know, oh, if I'm not breathing, it's going to hurt even worse. It's like, no, that's your body telling you that, hey, I'm about to actually hurt in about a minute from now. But you want to push through the end of the race here, trying to get your head down. Critically, she's run up on you. And I mean, one, hopefully you're not relying on your breath to get a look at the field. You should be trying to isolate yourself and not rely on checking other people out to determine how hard you're going to race. You should be a lone swimmer every time you're in a race, as much as you possibly can in regards to when you make moves and how hard you're working. But if you are, you don't see this girl, right? So taking lots of breaths, and yeah, you're running the good, again, let's make an assumption that this is a world where you're checking out the rest of the field. You've made the correct assumption. Breathe on your right so that you can see most of the field. But sneaky lane 1, the side that you're not breathing on, has snuck up on you. And her slightly increased, her move that she made when she was out of shot allowed her to catapult past you there. So a final 15-meter drive into the wall without breathing, right? Making sure that we're swimming as well and unobstructed as possible. Maybe increasing the kick rate and making sure that it's not a bit of an asymmetric. Watch this in full speed. There's a bit of an asymmetry again. It's like da-da-da-da-da-da, pause, da-da-da-da-da-da, pause. So it's every time your right arm goes in, right arm, we drop. Right arm, we drop. But then look at that. You make your quote-unquote move here. You don't breathe on the right stroke. So you save one breath. But look at how much more consistent that single stroke is. So we have the on and off and on, and now it's just on. Let's just stay on the entire way into the race, right? Let's not leave anything in the pool. And hey, if you're in pain and suffering for the next 5 minutes post-race because you weren't breathing for the last 15 seconds, 20 seconds of the race, great. You tried, right? We don't want to save ourselves, for our recovery. The recovery is there for a reason. But overall, I really like that race. A couple of misbalances in the body, your non-dominant side, should definitely be something that you're thinking about. But overall, really well swum. All right, we are 17:32. Let's go over to lane 5 with Lavinia. Opening frames. I think that's go. We can see maybe you're moving. Yeah. So there was maybe a couple frames where we could see you move, and it looked like it was in the back foot. So it looks pretty good to me. Maybe a bit, yeah. No, I like that. You're definitely moving the back leg kind of, at least simultaneously first, right? There's that little bit of a lift up that you're doing at the same time, but at least it's coupled with the fact that you're pressing on the back leg first. Just be careful of doing a lift and then a press. We want to be pressing as our first reaction. But overall, good looking extension on the back leg there. Good looking extension on the front leg. Good looking arc. Great pike by the looks of it. Nice entry. You see how you have this body position moving through the air where you get to this? This is awesome. This is what I'm constantly struggling to teach swimmers how to do this in the air. And you can see that the benefit is that your angle of attack entering the water is great. But then we don't see the follow through with the hips. We almost want there to be a bit of a hip pop around here so that the hips can fall into exactly the same spot. But instead, they fall just, it's only a little bit behind, but then also we see that the legs kind of slap into the water. This is overall a very good dive, but we do see that kind of big splash. So we know because of the splash that there is an inefficiency, that you are landing a little, call it long. But you've got the makings of a really good dive. So just playing with that, this is a great underwater. Love that. Great opening stroke. Let's go full speed here. Really like the look of this butterfly. You look like you're not even trying. You look like you're trying a little bit, but it's working very well. Maybe on that breathing stroke, we can consider trying to get our head down a little faster, a little more in line with our dive. You can see you're kind of doing a chest press into the water here, and then sort of slap in the water, versus, I bet you're not breathing on this stroke. A little bit of a slap, but your head's just a little bit more in line with where you're going, I think. Which makes sense, right? Like, a non-breathing stroke should be, by all accounts, like, cleaner. But maybe something to play with on the breathing strokes. I think that's a good finish. Yeah, I'd say that's a good finish. Not finish, but, touch. Let's go back to full speed here. By the looks of it, good underwater. Push that even farther, because you look like you have great underwater. That initial dive is evidence that you know exactly what you're doing underwater. If you can go, like the rule of thumb should be, I want to go as far underwater every length as possible, so long as I don't slow down, right? Those are your parameters that you're operating within. Maybe this is that limit, but you know what? I would argue, without seeing any of your other underwater, or at least not having it top of mind, that is not your limit. I guarantee you can put a little bit more energy in and get even just a meter farther underwater. Every single meter you can get farther underwater, especially on this turn, the butterfly to back turn, it's gonna pay off. Good looking on backstroke, looking powerful, looking strong. I'd say your stroke rate is probably pretty fine. It seems to match your stroke and match your power very nicely. You're traveling over the water really well. Maybe a little bit of a slowdown here. Checking the stroke rate difference. I don't have a watch that tells stroke rate in front of me, so I can't tell. Ooh, big slowdown. We see that? And huge slowdown at the wall. You're just giving the girls that you're racing free real estate here, okay? If we're traveling at X velocity here in the length, we want to be traveling at X velocity inside, or rather approaching and inside of the flags. I want you to hit the wall like there. Well, okay, even that stroke, there's a little bit of a slowdown, but you want to hit the wall at speed. That big slowdown is letting these girls who are, there are two realities here. Without watching any of these girls do their swim in one reality, they all do the exact same thing you did, which is basically see the flags and to have experience a significant slowdown, in which case you're all at the same disadvantage and this note doesn't matter for this race. There's another reality where any one of these or all of these girls don't experience the same slowdown, and they drive into the wall, at which point you are swimming 5 meters in the second leg of the 200 IM, slower, almost on purpose. Not almost on purpose, I'd say it is a decision, right? So it is on purpose. You're choosing to swim 45 meters fast, or as well as you can, and you're choosing to swim 5 meters slower than you are capable of. Whereas every other girl in that example is choosing to race 50 full meters, right? If you're the number one in town, still kind of a showboaty move, right? But at least you can back it up with the rest of the race. And if you're not number one in town, that's going to be one of the reasons that another person in your race might beat you, right? So drive in through the finish. That length of backstroke looked too good to have that kind of wall. A little bit farther on the breaststroke underwater, I'd like to see. The breaststroke itself is looking very efficient and consistent. I don't think that changes for the entire 50, so a little bit of a close-up. Maybe we can see, just repay attention to the stroke. Looks good to me. Like let's accelerate a little bit, get to this wall. I think that was a good touch. Let's go farther on the underwater here, right? Same logic as what I was discussing with your backstroke, but for some reason there's, that idea that the backstroke really benefits from underwater, and yeah, underwater on your back is better than underwater on your front, but like underwater is fast, and you swimming it as well, doing your dive, doing even the backstroke underwater, as well as you did, if you were bad at underwater, I wouldn't be making this note. Like if it was just horrendous and the conversation earlier had been, oh, you need to really work on your underwaters because they're not good, like we wouldn't be talking about this. We're not talking about that. You have good underwaters. It's about leveraging your advantage at this point. You're only going, like, I wouldn't even call this 5 meters. You're going 4 meters underwater on the last leg when you need to put some of these people down, right? Like, let's use every advantage. Let's not give them more room to potentially beat you on. Even if that means only going to 5 full meters, even if that means just going to 6 meters, anything is better than just 3.5, 4 meters underwater. I know I'm changing my numbers on you, but like, something else to consider, first couple of strokes of freestyle, let's try and make it so that it's not breathing. First 3 strokes to establish our high speed, our high stroke rate, everything, even just our hold, is a good rule of thumb, because we want to be operating at the highest potential speed right from the start. We don't want to have to work up into our speed. That's really difficult. It's a huge waste of energy and time and distance. I'd rather push off the wall, have a good underwater, fast underwater, surface, get 3 solid strokes in that are really, really good, and then breathe. And then ideally also not breathing in these last 10 meters, 15 meters, because choosing to breathe here doesn't preserve us for those last 10 meters. Like, we can get away with not breathing in these last 10 meters, and biologically, physiologically, there will be there's nothing that's going to happen to you. You're already in the state that you're going to be. Your body is using the energy reserves in these last 10 meters that, existed 45 seconds ago in your body, right? Like, the energy access isn't that fast. That breathing now is going to help you here. Breathing now, taking a look where my mouse is, breathing back here helps you when you're done your race. It absolutely makes the recovery quicker, better, nicer. But breathing coming into the wall, breathing is always an obstruction. Breathing is slow. It means that these last 10 meters are slower than they could be. All right. One last final thing, just checking out this finish. I'd rather see a real drive to the finish, okay? Again, this is just free opportunities for opponents that have better finishes than you. Getting your head down into a streamline position is going to make sure, getting your arm out in a streamline position rather than lifting to check the time, right? Not a good streamline. Lifting to check the time ASAP, right? Like, I get it. I fully appreciate why we're doing this, but a girl that you're racing that gets head down into her finish, into a streamline, well, this is a bad finish for another reason from the Point Claire girl, but at least she's driving for the wall, right? And she's, if she was up with you and she didn't have, didn't throw that extra final stroke in, if she was up with you, she might have touched you because you let off in the last 2 feet, whereas she's driving for the wall, right? She's trying to break her wrist there. That was also a bad touch from lane 2, so not a good example to look at. But overall, really, really nice swim, but definitely some opportunities to take note of and take advantage of. Nice swim.